I see Saracen Mufti. What are your views on Mark Zuckerberg's idea of creating the metaverse? Should we embrace it, or do you think it will isolate us further? I see Saracen. Shukran for this question, because I really wanted to discuss this on today's episode, and I think I'd actually forgotten. And min bab, as the verse of the Quran says, ذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And remind one another. It helps those of belief. Allah. So now, right, so Mark Zuckerberg has announced the project of the metaverse, and some tiny echoes and reflections are visible. So now when you load up WhatsApp, you can see it with the metaverse logo. And there's plenty. You can see Mark Zuckerberg's interviews, or he's got a presentation on YouTube explaining in his words and giving some glimpses into what this metaverse will look like. Surely, I mean, to what extent will it be able to live out all of those dynamics is a question, a serious question for, I'm sure, engineers, software engineers, and design creators and all the kind of experts. But it also gives rise to many other questions which I'm more interested in. But briefly, just to, in case, so the metaverse is briefly put, it's an attempt to turn social media from 2D into 3D. And that doesn't just mean the holographic or the augmented reality perspective. So we're not just talking about, wearing, obviously this is part of it, but it's not just about virtual reality. And I think this is what some people have confused, or maybe, I don't know, conflated, because there's a lot of criticism towards Mark Zuckerberg on this. And some people are trying to say, well, what's so special about this metaverse? These metaverses are already in existence. And there's some top ones. And they, especially, and an example of them is like Fortnite. But you see, I think they're missing the point of what Mark Zuckerberg is trying to embark upon. He's trying to take this to the next level. And I can say that, ladies and gentlemen, it is beginning to happen. Allah. We are now beginning to, and soon to experience, even whether we want to be a part of it or not, the illusory world, taking it several notches or exponentially higher, that it will now start to supersede our actual reality by far. So what he's suggesting is, apart from just social media, like I'm chatting to my friends, I'm catching up on newsfeed, I'm catching up on people's what they're doing, you create these rooms, virtual rooms. These are for work. So you can, because what we have to accept that post-pandemic, the world atmosphere has changed. So many people, many companies have now realized, actually, why are we using all these office spaces? I mean, that's fine, but we're just going to have many people working from home. This working from home is now a thing to stay. So you could create an augmented reality or a virtual reality where you are all in the office working. But whilst in that space, it is a shared space. You could play music, you could talk to one another, you could see each other's avatars, you could break off into different rooms, you could go create your own space, which replicates your actual places of living. So I could create a room just like the room I'm in now, but it's a virtual room, and in that room I get people to come hang out with me. And and we do. From there, we could say, I tell you what, let's go to the Great Wall of China. And we go to the Great Wall of China. We say, I tell you what, let's go to, the pyramids of Giza. Let's go to the Eiffel Tower. Let's go to Milan. Let's go to Tokyo. Let's go to wherever you want to go. You just turn up. And you have this sense of reality. You could do things like play games in there, but and you could move the games around. And what they're trying to do is, and there's obviously a lot of challenges, is to create an actual dynamism where, for example, you high five someone, you actually feel it, that you can. And this is now the emergence of, or at least the plan for an entire world to emerge, which is immersive. So those people saying, well, Mark Zuckerberg has, he's already lost the race to the metaverse because the metaverse already exists in games. That's true. It's a yes and no reply. That yes, it does exist in that sense for gamers, but it doesn't exist in this way. That it doesn't exist for all people who don't game, and it doesn't exist in the way that you create these break-off rooms and just lounge, that you just chill, or you work, or you have these board meetings. Let's have a board meeting. All right, guys, we're having a board meeting. We're setting it up in Shanghai. Right, here we are. This is now the work board meeting. We're having an AGM. We're hosting it over there. We're doing people may do their parties on these things. There will be currency on these. The world is actually becoming that, like they're making it 3D, the virtual world, like really 3D, like taking, I don't just mean optically. It's not just optics, it's the concept behind it. I think it's immensely powerful. It's in a way, it's scary, and I think it ties in very deeply to tonight's topic of alone or lonely, because I think in many ways it's going to connect us with many more people, but it's going to create this deeper state of solitude and loneliness. And because you can imagine, because on these things you can be who you want to be. People can change their genders. They can change their skin tone. They can change. Obviously, they're not advertising it like this, but you can do it. They say you can express yourself however you want. You can, somebody's not happy with the way their body looks, for example, their body shape. They're overweight, let's say, but in this they happen to be totally ripped, and people see them like this, and they create a persona. You see, ties in much with how Jung speaks about the personas, because the persona is deeply tied and connected to the shadow, this element of our struggle with the nafs. So we're going to have people that are living these lives, like in rooms replicating their own rooms, in homes replicating their homes, having gatherings with their friends, but augmented and kind of maybe not totally super, but enhanced versions of themselves, prettier versions of themselves, more attractive, more beautiful, more talented, more how they see themselves on the inside. Now, this is going to create a chasm between that world and when they take this off. And now they have to walk to the shop, and they don't like who they are. You see, so it's scary in the deep psychological challenges and problems this is going to portray. I don't know how people are going to really get around that, and it's going to create, I think, a tsunami. It's going to catalyze a tsunami of identity puzzles, conundrums, and problems coming especially towards younger people. So Yeah, but at the same time, this is inevitable. It's inevitable. Everybody knew this was going to happen. And we are now witnessing it in the making. It hasn't yet been launched, but maybe 5 years from today, this is how we'll be doing this, meaning with Mal. I'm there, people are there sitting in a virtual hall or an auditorium, or the world is changing, people. Dosto, dunya badal rahi hai. So it's scary times. We don't know what's but I think it's also important. I don't think there's any point in trying to say, should we not be a part of it? I don't think we'll have a choice. I think we may be less a part of it. I mean, think about Facebook. I'm not that active on Facebook. I'm not that active on social media. I mean, I am, but I'm at the same time, I'm probably definitely more involved in my real life than I am on social media. But it's already happening at a 2D level. People are already submerged in social media more than their real life. People, they order clothes only to wear them, take photographs, send them back. There's a really powerful clip on YouTube. Somebody made it about social media where people, they wake up and they do things, but just for the gram. They put on their jogging trainers and they put on their tracksuit and just take a photograph of their feet, putting them on, just say caption, going for a jog, and then they just take them off and go back to sleep. Somebody putting a breakfast together, a really healthy one, taking a photograph, saying that, brekkie time, but then just throwing it away and either not eating or just eating other things. And see, people, their lives, and then the likes drive them. It's the dopamine. See, this is it. The dopamine, huh? The devil is in the detail, people. Allah. Seriously. But I don't think we can avoid it. And even if we avoid it, people younger than us won't be able to. So, yeah. And, in many ways, it's like I said once before when I was asked that, what do I think of these narrations mentioning the Dajjal? And I'm not saying this in a kind of doom gloom way, but I said even then that obviously I'm with those scholars. There's a difference of opinion how authentic these narrations are, and even though many do accept them, there's some that have said these are not authentic, and I find more resonance with that. But I said that if they be true, then in my understanding, it would be referring to a time would come when humanity will find it almost impossible to distinguish the virtual from the real. And that is the great illusion, the great deception. And that is a Dajjal in that sense, that on this, because the form in Arabic is something that is excessively so. And Dajjala, because to cover up. And people would cover up, the Arabs would cover up with mud. They would cover up certain things. They would cover up even the camels if they got, they had a jarib. They had this kind of, this illness, this disease that afflicted certain camels, and you could see it on their skin, and they would cover it up with this kind of sand and mud so people couldn't tell. And this was the kind of Dajjal. And from here, a Dajjal, excessively deceiving sense of reality. And it is scary. It is scary, I have to say. I am frightful for people that are very young. I'm frightful for my own children and the world that their children will live in. Honestly, sometimes I think to myself, you know what, I'm just glad that, like, I'd be terrified to be young now. And I don't mean by young, like I'm obviously, I don't mean to minus my strength or to minus that I appreciate and that I love, the obviously life and its its vigor, its kind of strength, its everything. But to be young right now, I find the thought of it kind of so daunting. Not in a. It's just because it's just so much. I when I think about it, I'm somebody that's born and raised here in the UK. It's not like this is strange to us. It's not like we weren't familiar with these things. They were, the earlier computers when we were growing up. When I was a kid, there were the Spectrums and the Ataris and we used to have an Amstrad CPC 464. Those of you that remember that, with the screen and you had to put the cassettes in, and then obviously the Super Nintendos, but it's the world has changed, and I find it daunting. I'm not saying I find it's horror. It's not horror, but it's just daunting, and it's tiresome to even contemplate it. And you just think, God, I don't think I could go through that. Yeah.